Thank you very much. I've been wanting to hear you speak for a while. I've barely formulated my question. Was there any particular aspect of Miller's life or work, like some nut that you don't think you quite cracked, that didn't fit into the life that you wrote? Something that nagged you even after you finished? Maybe any particular thing that you just couldn't quite make fit, given all of his contradictions?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I'm not sure. I was really amazed when I sat down to think about that time and about my experience writing it by either, and I doubt, Henry Miller's pretty indelible, I doubt if I forgot it, but how little I felt I knew his life and knew him. And I mean, I can answer better what I might want to do if I were writing it again. And I mean, well, one of the main things, and this was no, it wasn't my idea, but it was a guy named Carl Orend, famous blast from the past. I don't know. Who undertook a biography of Miller, and what he felt needed to be done, and he used to really no holds barred, get after me for this. He said, "You have no sense of him as a European author. He's not an American author. He's not, I mean, Whitman maybe, but, certainly I don't think Hemingway or Hawthorne or not at all." But as time went by, and I guess even by the time Carl was haranguing me about this, I knew that I was wrong. And for instance, I was just talking to somebody, Proust alone, that's the whole author behind the Tropics and the Rosy Crucifixion. And I hadn't read Proust yet. I didn't know, and we Americans don't have a very broad comparative literature background. So that I felt that was something I really had given short shrift to. And the thing about Henry Miller, and there was a very rough trilogy of Miller, Mailer, and Hemingway, but it was really only because I wanted to write about all three of them. And in between, I'd do these women, Louise Bryant and Peggy Guggenheim, because all the testosterone was too much. But it was kind of a red herring. And Miller, none of them were run-of-the-mill sort of, sorry, I don't want to use the word chauvinist twice in one night, but they were not run-of-the-mill. What they were is, they were men who observed the relations between the sexes, men and women, gender roles, and recorded, what they saw, and then sort of weirdly affected it in turn. So that, and that's, I don't think that's very true of Miller. It's more true of Mailer. Well, it also was a factor in when they wrote. So I guess, and I have a feeling I'll just get myself into trouble if I continue with that. And Hemingway, whole different thing. So that didn't answer your question, but.
No, it did. Yeah. I'm sure you probably relate to that, what Miller said about Lawrence, that when he got to the end of the D.H. Lawrence stuff that he was working on, he felt he realized he could have said one thing just as well as another. All the opposites, there was no way to find his way out of it. One was as good, as true as another. Like the American-European thing.
Yeah.
One is as defensible as the other, I think.
I think he'd say that. He was a slippery object to study. that way. I don't know, there are some academics here, but that's kind of tough. Yeah. Well, here it comes.
Sorry, I wore loud shoes. That was more dramatic than I anticipated. I was just wondering, what is, in all of your research, do you have a favorite story that you learned about Henry Miller?
Again, I'm going to have to think. I've told you some of my favorite working on Henry Miller stories. I'm just reading this over, I can't think of one,
That's
but
okay.
reading it over, for example, when he was, I was talking about the typefaces. I remember that when he first got there, he signed something, Little Henry, Big Sir. I thought that was just so winning. He had this really, really lovable side when he wanted. A lot of times he didn't want to. And maybe it's because I was writing this coming out of Brooklyn, but I'm a big fan of the Brooklyn Henry, and, well, I'll think of some, and I'll tell you on this weekend.
All right, I'm excited to see what you come up with. I love your book, and I'm very glad that you were here to speak to us today. It's an honor.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that wonderful lecture. I have a question which is related to what you just now said, particularly related to biography writing. You said that gossip is the key to biography writing. You have mentioned this. Now, I just want to know, after all, Henry Miller was somebody who was almost a celebrity figure. Particularly on account of controversies surrounding him. So, gossip, a celebrity figure, all that, sometimes, gossip has that centrifugality about it which might, deviate the biographer from facts. So how does a biographer, balance between the centrifugality of gossip? How does one manage? How does one strike a balance? How have you achieved it?
Well, that's the question. Though, I really am a big believer in gossip, but they're already, biographers are really threatened by AI. And, well, think about it, okay? So there's the facts, right? And they can be fed the facts and I don't know, I haven't read one written by AI, but we sure worry about it a lot, biographers. But I think that there's a lot more than facts. And I think you have to make sure that you go beyond facts. And that things like, well, if you want to call it gossip's just relationships between people. Or I suppose, there's, okay, this is less, I'm on shakier ground. Gossip's about, say, oh, I heard Henry lost all his money in that venture. That's really gossip. And I'm not sure, well, as a biographer, I'd know whether or not to investigate that, but I think more I'd look at why a rumor like that would get started, who started it, and where it came from and what it tells me about the people around Henry. And now, he didn't, but I'm not sure. I don't know if that quite answers that question either, but I'll just defend gossip to the death. And also, did someone say context? Yeah. And it's also, we like to hear stories about our fellow human beings, and what is it, why? Why do we? And it's not only because they signed a peace deal or, there are a whole bunch of things. We want to know how people live their lives, and what makes them tick. And and to me, that I'd class those kinds of things that I want to know, I guess, as gossip, though I don't want to use that. You have a body of work that is a whole other thing, that is the reason that it brings you to the biographer's to the subject's life in the first place. So it doesn't go that far, but
Thank you.
it's a good question.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just have to respond to what you said about AI, because I was writing about that, and listening to them say that AI can do all these plot things, but thinking that how can you read something without making the connection to the human behind it? When you fall in love with Henry Miller or whichever author you fall in love with, you're interested in their writing, but you're also interested in the person. So with you as a biographer, I think that's true also. I was in Australia and I read Prairie Fires.
Oh yeah, the one about
Laura
Ingalls Wilder.
Yeah, and I never read her, even though I was an elementary school teacher, but I fell in love with the biographer.
Yeah, it's a great
So I don't think you have anything to fear with anybody that knows anything about reading and loving, So,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to answer that.
Thanks
a real
for
question.
reminding me of that book. It's by her daughter. Laura Ingalls Wilder is Little House in the Big Woods, or
Prairie.
yeah, the whole bunch of them. But anyway, she had quite an interesting life, and her daughter relationship. Talk about, that's all very. And I've never been a fan of those Little House
Me
books,
neither,
but
but
I
the
found the
biography
biography
was
fascinating. Yeah, it's all about curiosity about these people, caring about these people. It's funny that I wasn't. There were a million things I loved about Henry Miller. Whoever asked that question about my favorite stories, but it's people ask whether I come to dislike my subjects or, whether, and, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but I always care really deeply. I really deeply about them, and just want to I feel protective toward them, for example, and it's not something that AI can do. I don't think, well, there are a lot of things that AI can't do, but just writing biography, it'll never work. But they'll try. Anyway.
Hi. I have a question. I'm curious about your source. You said that when Henry was having problems, he considered faking his own death. Where did you hear that from?
That's in the letters between him and Harry Hershkovitz in the 40s. It's in fact, I don't know that I cite that particular letter. They talked about it a few times, but also, other people, that was floated around because people wanted to help Henry. He didn't have any money, and they wanted to think of a way to, and, you know, that made as much sense as, why, it sounds like he.
Well,
no,
the
otherwise-
reason I'm curious is because Maurice Gerardius did fake his own death in order to avoid the censors.
He what?
In order to avoid the censors over the books that he was publishing, like Histoire d'eau by,
Right.
and also, what's the one that, Lolita.
Yeah,
And so that, then those books were published in the 50s. And his accountant wrote to the police saying that Henry died.
oh, that, yeah.
And then after that, they stopped looking for him, and then he resurfaced a year later, and people had forgotten about it.
Then Maurice had died, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well-
anyway, that was why I was curious.
He did, yeah. I don't think it's related, I don't know, maybe it is, but
Yeah.
Maurice Gerardius did stuff like that. He was a real, nice, sweet guy, but he was desperate, you know, and he, anyway, yeah, I'm not surprised he did. I didn't know that, thanks.
It's not often we get to talk to someone does these big comprehensive biographies. So my question is, I wrote a biography of a very obscure 19th century figure, and I was very proud of it. And 6 months later, somebody found more information about this guy. And I was like, I didn't include this in the biography. So I wanted to know your advice. How do you deal with that kind of, especially, you know, your figures have so much information about them. I'm dealing with this little thing, but how do you deal with that emotionally and you know, as a storyteller?
Yeah, emotionally, it's awful. I mean, no, it's, you're amazed to hear it or whatever, but it's just like this. I don't even know if I'd call that a feeling of failure. Yeah, it's awful. On the other hand, this happened. I wrote about this woman, Louise Bryant, who was married to John Reed. You might remember, do you remember the movie Reds with Warren? That's Diane Keaton as Louise Bryant. And it was a wonderful story, and not much was known about her. And I dug and dug and dug, and there was a whole story about a trunk full of John Reed's papers that she ended up giving to Harvard. And Louise Bryant was, people weren't very fair to her. Emma Goldman said, well, she was never a communist, she just slept with the communists. but anyway, strangely, I moved to where Louise Bryant lived, and in fact saw in the mansion that her husband had, where she'd lived briefly. Anyway, long after, I guess it was 15 years after I wrote my book, in the barn of this house that I had seen in my new neighborhood, somebody found her trunk, the trunk of the Louise Bryant papers.
Oh, wow.
And it's really, I mean, I was very excited, but you know, how could I not be? And okay, it's strange, long story, but it ended up at Yale. And I went down there and looked at it, and I wrote a paper, I wrote an article for the Yale Alumni Monthly, and it had, boy, the visuals in that, because it had like, there was her address book, which had like Lenin's phone number in it. And there's a sword of Trotsky's that was in the trunk. And she had known Eugene O'Neill, if you remember Red, she had an affair with Eugene O'Neill, but Eugene O'Neill wrote these poems to her that were in the trunk. So it was like, and anyway, every time I turn around, I tell someone, if you know any history grad student who wants a really good topic, it's just sitting there waiting for someone to pick it up. And, you know, those are letters and manuscripts, just what a biographer dies for. But I don't want to go back and do it.
Yeah.
that it's a.
No revising, no.
No, it's, you know, yeah, I guess, it's a really weird feeling. But with her, I was just delighted.
Thank
Anyway,
you so much for that.
sure.
I wanted to ask, getting to know, like, these kind of figureheads of adventure, like Miller and Hemingway, because something I find, like, as a woman, getting into their heads and allowing myself to kind of look at the world in that way has been world-opening in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and I just wonder, especially at the time that you were getting to know them, what that did for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I wouldn't even, you just articulated it better than I've ever been able to. But it's really true, there's something, if writing about, especially like, not Mailer so much, but Hemingway and Miller and these like, yeah, like, I don't want to use the word swashbuckling, no, but these real adventurous lives. There's something really, really, well, liberating about it, and writing about them. I mean, that's, you know, often women, Louise Bryant, lead lives that are as exciting. She went to, you know, she was in Russia during the Russian Revolution and so forth, but she wasn't really, she didn't really, she did report on that, but in her fiction and so forth, she didn't really write about that. She was relationships between people more. It's, I don't want to traffic in any kind of gender thing, but I think there's something really wonderful about working on men who had that kind of freedom. So yeah, that's, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for a great conversation.
Oh, good.